You're muted.
Welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business. Thanks for telling me I was muted, Don. Y'all know it usually kicks on, but on a beautiful day in February that I think reached a high of about 78. Crazy weather. I won't complain, but so much. It's nice to just walk around and be leisurely, but it is so just feels odd to not put something on my arms when I'm outside in February. But just want to say hello to everyone here in the space and everyone that's joining, whether they're listening on YouTube or just patching in another way. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. There's Julia. Glad you could make it. I was definitely in favor of having women represented on the panel tonight because we're talking about something that hopefully I don't come across as an old fuddy-duddy man, but something I think that requires the presence of women to discuss, especially when I'm maybe positioned against a whole lot of them, and that's feelings. Uh, tonight's topic is the state of youth. Um, how useful are our feelings? I won't say they're not useful, first and foremost, and we're going to do something. Hopefully, Vanessa gets back connected because she kind of introduced a significant practice to this space a couple weeks ago when we were on, and I think it was in regards to defining certain words to make sure that we're kind of similarly uh, thinking about my topic questions. So in this case, before we answer the prompt question of how useful are our feelings, um, we'll begin by sharing whatever our definitions of feelings are, because I'm not talking about when you touch a hot stove and you get a little flustered or angry, and I guess you could throw those in there, but I'm speaking more about the ones that come up in relationships and conversations, when you may feel offended, when you may be angry at another person's actions, and so on and so forth, and whatever else may come up in that realm. But I think everybody can have a bit of an understanding of how this topic is to be discussed. But I still think, again, I thought Vanessa brought up a good thing a couple weeks ago, and that was kind of defining certain terms and how we may process them as individuals. So thanks for joining, Bob, Jay, Dwayne, Julia, and Vanessa. Don, you appreciate what you do on the Wheels of Steel. So let's get this wonderful conversation started with. Again, I'm so glad that we had a couple of ladies to join us because uh, Jay, Bob, and myself talking about this, I don't know that it gets very far. But I think Jay's got some things to say. He may even correct me on the thought that I need to have women in this space for this. But we'll see how this goes. So first and foremost, before we get to the first prompt of how useful are our feelings, I want to begin with you giving a definition or your ideas about what feelings are in the context that we're trying to discuss them. I like the idea. So Vanessa, you kind of introduced that. I want to start with you if you're there and available to say something. She locked up again. Is it froze again? You there?
I'm not sure what's going on with my audio. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. Your
Okay.
picture's
Um,
froze, but if you can, just give us your definition of feelings.
okay. Well, for me, um, feelings are feelings are your truth. And I would say that they are conceptualized or manifested through your biological or your visceral reactions. And notice I didn't say that they were someone else's truth, because what we deem as factual isn't always factual. Again, there are many viewpoints on a certain things, but it is your truth. And so when we talk about, how useful are they? I think God in his infinite wisdom, he programmed us this way because we don't get to weigh in. Our physical biological reaction is going to dictate to us whatever that truth is. And so if you are offended, if you're hurt, if you are frightened, if you're angry, any of those things, that's going to be your reaction, because biological creatures, we can't exactly tell our bodies what to do. They tell us how we feel. And so that's why, for me, truth is the conceptualization or the manifestation of what your truth is, or your truth is just that, those reactions that, again, we don't get to weigh in on. They are intrinsic. They are, automatic. And so, that would be my 2 cents on feelings.
That's not just 2 cents. That's like a quarter and 2 dimes or something. That's a good observation, because I truly appreciate your use of something that I also find very problematic, when somebody says I'm living my truth and all of that type thing, because I'm always like, there's just the truth. And if you're doing this I'm living my truth type attitude, you're dismissing someone who may be better aligned with whatever is ahead, and not consumed with, no matter what I do, it's my truth. But I like how you equate that to feelings. I can accept that a little bit easier, based on, as a situation happens and people can get consumed with how they feel about it. And like you say, they can base so much on what's taking place from their dynamic and perspective. And I think, in my observation, that can somewhat do a disservice, but I still can accept it being processed as their truth. I like that application, and I thanks for that contribution. Julia, coming to you. Define feelings for us in your own way.
Wow, Vanessa, that was the $100 bill explanation. Definitely tied to the emotions, to reactions, but I do think there's a way. I think we all have our triggers that set off certain feelings. Um, but I do think that we are able to, when we say, you hurt my feelings, then we are putting someone else in control. So I do think that there is um, a way to not take things so personally. That to recognize, I think, what our triggers are. And I'm often surprised when I get a charge out of something, because I'm pretty even keel. But once in a while, something, yeah, something gets me, and I'm like, where did that come from? And so, in that way, feelings are like a useful barometer to see what we need to look at, perhaps.
I like that observation as well. I think of, the moments when you have an overwhelming, as you stated, and it's a reaction to something, or it can be an accumulatory thing where stuff is just piled up. And I think being self-aware is critical to how you express without giving others your water, as I say, giving somebody else, throwing their disposition off because you just are just rant raving and just giving it up. And it's not beneficial or healthy for interactions at that point. I try to be self-aware, and Julia, I think that's something you alluding to, be self-aware and kind of know when you might need to be away from people for a moment, so that you don't cause something by overly sharing feelings that could be detrimental to a situation or a interaction. Bob, coming to you next, man. How are you defining feelings?
I guess I think of feelings as as one's emotional response, different than one's intellectual or thoughtful or logical response to things. And I think that, to use one of Vanessa's terms, it's a visceral thing. It's not calculated. It's not It's not looked for. It is a visceral kind of reaction to whatever might be going on, and it could be positive, it could be negative, it could be neither. It could be joyful, it could be hurtful, it could be frightful, it could be an array of things, and it could be understood, and it could be misunderstood, and it could be not understood. To Julia's point, where did that come from? Why am I feeling this as a response to that? Or you might know exactly why you're feeling what it is. And I also agree with what Julia said about if you use the term, somebody hurt your feelings. I don't. That's a phrase that I really don't understand, because I don't understand how you can get mad, but if you let somebody else do something that quote unquote hurts your feelings, you've just taken yourself out of the driver's seat of your own life, and I don't understand that. I think that concept is an emotionally or a feelings immature kind of reaction.
Yeah, as we often do here, we kind of jump around before I get to a question, because I attach even that sentiment to a large degree to children. That's one of their favorite things to say. You hurt my feelings, and that'll come up down the line of questions. Hopefully, get there quickly. But that is exactly an emotional immaturity, and it's okay. I think we should make room for kids. And again, that question will come up. Jay, this is your topic, because I thought I handled myself pretty well in this space concerning feelings many times over in many shows ago, but Jay brought it back up. And it was at the end of a show we did a couple weeks ago that was like, he said feelings are some good stuff that we got to have and use. I'm definitely paraphrasing. So I'm going to stop putting words in your mouth, Jay, and let you cover this topic and along the way define feelings for this discussion.
Okay, my definition of feelings is just feelings are nothing more than signals. They're alerting our body that something needs our attention. And then we develop perceptions on what those signals are a little later. So I'm not going to deviate because I know what you said. But in short, I just feel like feelings are nothing more than signals that are alerting our body that we need attention to something.
I can dig that. I think that's a good way of looking at it, to kind of simplify and maybe even help process. So if you think of it that way, you want that instant feedback that again keeps us in that mindset of being self-aware, kind of knowing what your triggers are, things of that nature. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I think we're complicated in nature, and we tend to process and examine at the same time. Well, we kind of need an intake process, like, okay, something is happening here. What is actually happening, and what am I really taking away from this moment? And I think we kind of lump it all together, and then it does come out like we process things like being uncomfortable with being angry or sad, and we may not be angry or we may not be sad. To Bob's point, it's just that something happened. What just happened, and how do I truly feel about it, versus just blurting it all out at one time. And I think we sometimes avoid that processing state to see how we feel about it before giving some type of judgment.
Yeah. So a quick aside before we get to the next question. Yeah, I think that thing that you mentioned is just existent in us, that is just waiting for something to react to. It shows itself in so many different ways. I think about text. I think texting is one of the worst forms of communication. And whatever you may be dealing with at the moment is going to trigger that voice to read that text in one way or the other, and could completely be not something you're supposed to take a certain way. And I think, in my opinion, that's something to do with that. What is your disposition? And like you say, Julia, why am I feeling this way? And if you read a text or read some message or get a phone call, whatever it is, you can just be thrown off kilter because you found some place inside of yourself that is just kind of waiting to go one way or the other with the reaction. That's why, as Julia said, I try to do that even keel approach. But at times things do get overwhelming and you find yourself just going one way or the other and you don't necessarily know why. That whole little saying that comes up, that's not like them at all. That little energy right there. The prompt that's there, the state of you. I think I got that part together. Just, how are you feeling at the moment? The state of you. How useful are our feelings though? That is the primary question. Is there a usefulness? Jay, I'm coming back to you because I think that's pretty much what was the catalyst, that there was some usefulness there that I was not aware of. So inform me.
Yeah, feelings are extremely important because they're your first line of defense. They're letting you know, hey, something needs your attention. And I think the perception of how feelings are expressed causes a lot of us to not reach our maximum potential. Like, use an example you just stated. You said that there are times that I get overwhelmed. Being overwhelmed is a feeling. Now, how do I express that? Especially in society right now, the only time people are most truthful is when they're angry. How many times have we heard people say, go on somewhere before I hurt your feelings? Or I'm going to tell you the truth, you can't handle it. Well, why would you withhold the truth? And why do we weaponize truth as if it's something bad? When you can easily say, hey, right now I'm overwhelmed and I'm not prepared to have this discussion. Why do I have to be angry to tell you the truth? And so really the honest part about that, even the text message, I'm having a bad day. I don't need to read your text message. And see, I'm the opposite. Don't talk to me when I'm having a bad day. Text me or email me so I can have time to process, because your voice may irritate me, or I may say something, right? I may snap, and you might think I have an attitude with you, and I don't even have an attitude with you. I just may have an attitude in general, and I don't feel like being chipper. So text me, so that way you don't get that attitude. So it's all those things that we can kind of talk about, but your feelings are telling you like, hey, I don't feel normal today. Why don't I feel normal? I feel overwhelmed. Communicate, I feel overwhelmed, or that person may be a victim of me feeling overwhelmed in that moment. But that's still, the onus is on me. You see what I mean? And I don't have to be quote unquote emotional in that perception of what emotionalism is. I can clearly articulate how I feel without getting outside of character. I really feel like sometimes those are just choices we want to do. Like, we want to lash at somebody, so we'll say, I'm sorry, I was just angry. No, you just wanted a last shot and it felt kind of good, but now that you don't come down, you feel bad. But feelings are there and they're very valid, and they're the first line of defense.
So I believe that one of the broader ways of communicating some of what you're saying in terms of being left alone is that I'm tired feeling. Might not be tired. That's just that, hopefully everybody understands I don't want to be bothered at the moment. So I kind of like using I'm tired if there's a feeling of don't want to be bothered. There's something else I'm going to share at some point in this conversation that I think simplifies things. And it's a good book. And I don't usually recommend books over the airwaves in this way, but I think it's worthy of this conversation. I'll come back to it. Bob, give me your ideas around how useful our feelings are.
I think our feelings are very useful if we recognize them and work to use them constructively, as opposed to just wallow in them or react to them or try to use them as how do I say this? Use them as if they are reason and logic and thoughtful and etc. I think we are built, as Vanessa said, we're built with both thoughts and feelings. We're built with the capacity to use both of those things. And so I have to believe that there's a good reason for that. And I think that we have to take our feelings and determine, okay, what do we learn from them? What are they saying to us? And understand where they're coming from, and then also understand, okay, are they fair? Am I reacting fairly or logically or unfairly or otherwise? I mean, it doesn't change the validity of the feeling for ourselves, but if I'm reacting to something, if I'm responding to something with a feeling, but that feeling is betraying something that's irrational on my part, or betraying something that's a vulnerability on my part rather than a strength, then I need to come to terms with that. I don't need to use that as a justification for how the world should operate, or how a meeting should go, or how somebody should respond to me. I think we need to own them, recognize them, and then do our work with them, such that then we can be the better person to actually interact in the world. And I think that requires thought, it requires consideration, it requires truth, it requires logic, it requires the other part of things that's not feelings.
Indeed. Yeah, I think that, throws me back into my positionality concerning feelings. There's a whole lot of places we end up that we probably could avoid if we are more self-aware and understand what we're actually trying to accomplish or process, as opposed to getting consumed with how we feel. But we'll keep talking. Vanessa, coming to you, how useful are our feelings?
Very useful. I like what Bob and what Dwayne have said about the whole self-awareness part. But for me, kind of just a bit of a caveat there. With regard to feelings, and I guess I could put it like this: I know what's in my trash can. In other words, I know my triggers. I know those things that have caused me pain. I am the author of my own experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. I know what's there. Now, and it doesn't matter how hard or how deep I may press down on it, like when you throw something in the trash can and you're trying to maximize that bag, you keep just stuffing stuff down. If I don't eventually empty my stuff, it will stink. And what I mean by that is simply this, everybody has feelings. And that's why, when I first started, talking about, what is my definition, the onus being on the word my feelings, because we all have them. And whereas I can certainly be mindful of someone else's feelings, I can certainly be respectful of someone else's feelings, but I cannot and I shall not be responsible for someone else's feelings, because people oftentimes, want to put their cloak of whatever onto you and to make you that responsible party. And so there are not enough days in the year, not enough hours in the day for me or anyone to tap dance around, what other people are feeling and experiencing, in any given moment. And that's why, again, the whole issue of being self-aware is so critical, because, we can all be looking at the same thing. But if I'm looking at that thing through a hurt lens of some type of pain and devastation, I'm going to see that a little differently. And so, again, yes, absolutely, there are signals, but let's examine the signals so that we understand where they're coming from and what our responsibility is in terms of monitoring those things. Because if we do not, then we get a world full of people who are angry at everybody and angry at nothing, because that's just who they choose to be. And so, absolutely. But again, the responsibility and the onus being on the individual. That's how I would say.
Agreed. So much of this is, I think, connected to how considerate you are of others throughout the processing of your feelings. I think Bob mentioned the word being considerate. That's important. It's critical, because you're not the only person in the world. you're just the world doesn't revolve around you. All of that stuff. If you don't have the ability to make concessions for those around you, also having feelings, it's going to put a cap on how social you can actually be, because you probably are coming across as extremely sensitive, and sometimes people don't want to deal with the eggshells. That's
Yeah.
the way we talk about that, the eggshells. Go ahead, Vanessa.
If I could just kind of add one other thing, and maybe my husband won't shoot me, he's in another room, for saying this, but I just really feel strongly about this because I think we're all works in progress. We learn things, and I've been married a long time, and I love my husband dearly, and one of the things that we learned together as a couple was, again, the whole issue of being self-aware is something that you have to, one, learn, and two, you have to practice, and three, you certainly have to get better at it. My husband is a war veteran. He's seen conflicts in three different engagements across the world, and there are things that obviously that he has experienced that he shared with me that I cannot begin to conceptualize and wrap my mind around. And I remember when he returned home, and the issue of just reestablishing how do we communicate again when no longer is my norm your norm, no longer, despite how long we've been married, your experiences are my experiences. And so again, just trying to thread that line, and what we had to come to was exactly that. Yes, I can empathize, I can sympathize, and I can know the depths of your pain if you choose to share it with me. But I cannot be responsible for those things that I have no control over. And so we have to learn to, as certainly we did as a couple, and we have to, as human beings, learn to give each other grace in the moment to, and yes, we understand. We all know people that are just angry and mean and vicious, and yes, some bigoted and racist as well. But for those that are truly just trying to navigate those spaces with perhaps well-meaning intentions, but maybe not doing the best job at it. That's why, again, just being self-aware and knowing what your own triggers are is so very important, especially if, as Jay said, you're having a bad day, because, there's nothing like seeing something one way today and recognizing tomorrow morning that that wasn't the way that it was, and having reacted to someone from that visceral hurt place, because hurt people hurt people.
Agreed again. I think going through something significant, as your husband's service, shows also it can be something that significantly affects how we process other things, and things that some people may not even see a certain way. His experiences could have transformed some simpler things, and it's great to be aware enough to figure out how to navigate a recalibrated you, a person that now interacts with things a little differently. So I think that's the work, and I think it's the work for everyone. But yeah, having something significant in your life happen can definitely affect you. Julia and Greg, good to see you, Greg, first and foremost. Thanks for joining in. I get to hear another perspective and point of view. I think this topic is right up your alley. So I'm looking forward to hearing your response. So Julia, Greg, you guys take it away. How useful are our feelings?
Great. First of all, I'm in full agreement with what Joy Dwayne, Bob, and Vanessa shared. One thing Vanessa shared that, and gosh, hats off to the way you all are navigating the situation with your husband. And but I think that is honesty and communication is so important, because and also empathy. The word empathy came up when Vanessa was talking, because we can't have any idea what her husband went through. But goodness gracious, setting up, through feelings, through empathy, we can connect with other people. We can't save them. We can't fix their situations, but to what Bob said, using feelings in a constructive, useful way. And also to what I think everybody has said, being sensitive to our environment. How is what I'm saying, how I'm being in this environment affecting who I'm with? And if I'm having a bad day, which I don't agree with bad days, or I think we need to control our bad days. Then I need to stay in my room and not expose other people to it. So, but I appreciate all the wise comments.
Wow. I came in during Vanessa's comments, and beautiful. Thank you, Vanessa. So how useful are emotions? Well, I don't know how useful they are, but they are necessary. They are part of what the human experience is. I think where they become useful is when they're dominated or controlled by the mind, by the mental body, by what we're able to do from a higher part of what a human being is capable of. We're capable of controlling our emotions, so they're not so useful until we control them. And then we are useful to society and to each other. I was thinking about first responders, and I was thinking about folks that are coming out from being incarcerated. Man, they are in the front line of the human experience in terms of controlling emotions and learning through that fire, walking that fire. I don't know what more to say, except my hat is off to anyone and everyone who works in those areas of human experience that come through a incarceration, come back into society, control their emotions from war, and come back into society and actually do good. God, that is an incredible thought, to have that kind of control and be able to give back and contribute to society. Anyway, we're the best when our emotions are controlled by what's above our emotions, which is
heart and mind.
Heart and mind.
Yeah, well said. I have stated so much in this space before, ideas around certain philosophical teachings and so on and so forth. Stoicism comes to mind. It's just processing this world the best way you can, and understanding what's real and what's not, and what is the truth versus what your truth is, and all of that type stuff. I'll say this part now. There's a wonderful book that I really, really enjoy. It's a short read, and I recommend it to anyone. And the gist of it is just to get these 4 things. It's called The 4 Agreements, and it is something that really is a center to this idea of potential volatility. The 4 Agreements, really quickly, and one of them plays directly into what Jay said earlier about truth. Just tell the truth. So the first one is be impeccable with your word. Another one is don't assume. Don't take anything personal, and then do your best to do those 3 things. Primarily, they cover the basis of everything we've kind of discussed here. Don't assume that you know what situation you walked into, or what somebody's thinking, or what somebody was doing when you couldn't see what they were doing. Don't take anything personal. Somebody could be having a very bad, terrible day. You don't need to react to that. Don't think that what they're doing that may seem negative to you, may seem insulting to you, is about you. Make room and have consideration for whatever they're experiencing. So those are certain practices that I feel can tamper down some of that frazzled thinking that can be applied to when feelings take over. So yeah, that's a good observation, Greg. Try to control it a little bit up there. And it's going to be a time when you just got to go in the room, close the door, and turn off the lights and go to sleep, whatever the case may be. But hey, just try to move a certain way so that you can avoid landmines, feeling landmines. Okay, got another good, I think, good question. Um, and you have to be if you're trying to be decent here. So this is the question. You have to do this if you're trying to be a decent human being. Jay, I'm coming to you first. Uh, do you consider others when your feelings take the lead? When you know you're in that raw, maybe a wounded, no scab situation, do you consider others throughout that process of your feelings taking over?
Oh, that's a good question. I do want to just clarify, just as we're having a conversation, I think that we are using feelings and emotions simultaneously or interchangeably, and they're not the same thing. But for some strange reason, we use them back and forth. And also, there is an assumption like that you can control your reactions or your responses to things that you've never experienced before, which may not necessarily be true. Um, Different things drive different reasons for whatever reason. Like if I'm tased, I don't know how I'm going to respond. And no matter how prepared you might think you are, it's just different. And so there's also an assumption that when we're talking about our emotions, even in a full state of self-aware, you don't know the things that lie subconsciously all the time. There are some things you're fully aware of, but there's some things that are not. And when you encounter certain people, it may be a deferred reaction where that person may cause a response in you, not anything that they're doing, but something that brought back a memory that you weren't even thinking about. And a lot of times people claim to know themselves, but they could be another reason. Like for me, I hate when people lie. I used to say that all the time, but it wasn't until therapy that I realized it's not that I hate that people lie, is I hate for people to make decisions for me. So when you lie, you rob me of the opportunity of knowing the truth, and you've decided what was best for me. So I feel like sometimes we use a lot of these things because we're these amazing humans who combine all of these things at one time. So when we're trying to have a conversation, it's kind of hard to dissect just that singular thing because it's so connected to so many other things. But to answer your question, when I'm in an emotional state, initially, no, I think about myself. And I think that there is a misnomer about being selfish versus the social perception of it versus what it was truly intended to be. Self-preservation is very important. I owe it to myself to know what's going on for me, or I will be in danger to others. So I think of myself first, and I think of others secondary as I get a better understanding of what it is I'm experiencing in that moment.
Good answer, and way to be as clear as you were with that answer. I think I'm the opposite, and I do agree with that conflation of emotions and feelings. Also, they kind of get blurry because they are attached. One can cause another, and vice versa. But yeah, that's interesting. I think I rush to consider others, especially when I know I'm just like I have got to shut it down and don't keep talking to me. I that's not about me. That is like I'm considering you because I don't want to give you my water. That's one of my favorite things to say. I don't want to impose my negative or angry or whatever feeling that is I'm having. If I know it's not a good one, I don't want to give it to you. Vanessa, coming to you, do you consider others when your feelings take the lead?
Well, if I were being totally honest, no. um, and I would have to say that it is much as you said, kind of the flip flop of Jay, but for this reason, and not to play the sexist card, but I think as a woman, my training and the training for so many women has been that we, defer to other people and their benefit and well-being many times before our own. And like I said, it took me until I was an adult to understand that, yeah, self care was important and that I could be truthful and authentic and preserve my own mental well being in the process. And I to go back to the example that I shared with you before, when going through that, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I mean, PTSD is real, not just for my husband, but for many other soldiers and first responders and all of that. But how you fix the problem, whether it's something as severe as this or just people getting along and giving each other grace in sometimes some challenging and difficult situations. You have to recognize that if what you're doing is to your own detriment, then you're not really bettering yourself or adding anything to anybody else's equation, because you're looking at that from a biased perspective. And so for women, many times, I know I do, I'm gonna, okay, so what's best for, someone I love, my husband? What do I do to make sure that my children are okay? And I will burn myself literally to the ground trying to fulfill all of these things. When I get to a space, very much like the mammals that we are, when we are now depleted, when we are now robbed of our own, ability to see, what's before us, then we react very much the same way as a caged animal would. We strike out. And it took me until I was an adult to understand that, yeah, I don't always need to do that. I don't always need to, you know, preserve the mental sanctity and clarity of others, rather than to care for my own self. And so in doing that, I'm a better person. I think I'm a better mother, a better partner, a better coworker. I've found that that is not as hard as I once thought it was. Sometimes it just means pumping the brakes. Maybe I don't have to respond to you in that moment. Maybe I don't have to solve the world's problems in a day. God himself took 7. So why can't I take 2 hours? So that's just kind of how I feel. So.
I like that observation as well. And I do believe women are nurturers. And I think that kind of places so much of what they're dealing with to the side, because they're tasked with someone else's well-being almost relentlessly for long stretches as parents and as caregivers to whomever they encounter. I think that's a natural tendency for a lot of women. Not, I'm a Bo fan. Everybody has different things on the sides of the coin, I guess. There's definitely some guys that probably care a lot more than some women do, and vice versa. But by and large, I agree with your observations there. It's always just trying to get things better. Julian and Greg, do you consider others when your feelings take the lead?
That is such a good question. I think when my feelings take the lead, most often I'm in a self-absorbed place that I need to get out of. And it's interesting. My husband is very good. It's using sometimes humor, sometimes a question like, "How long do you think you want to stay in victim today?" Or do you want to go in the corner for 15 minutes? And which is what I need sometimes. If we can, I know that the times that it's interesting, we can be in some kind of mood and the phone rings and it's a good call, somebody we really want to talk to, and we can get out of that just like that. So I think, to Vanessa, being honest and saying, and especially with our spouses and those we're closest to, just saying, I'm not prepared to talk about that right now. And for me, if I haven't eaten, in several hours, I get low blood sugar. So he'll say, all right, we'll talk after you had something to eat. So I think just having that honesty, that communication, and whenever I can think about the other person more than myself, it does help me reverse the flow. The other thing that I just want to mention is something that we've worked with some as a community, and that's poisons that hide, things that are inside you that, it's the trash can example, Vanessa. You keep stomping it down, but sooner or later it's going to come out. So recognizing those and dealing constructively with them so they don't just jump out of the trash can or like evil spirits. Okay.
This is a pretty sophisticated conversation. It can be. Feelings are an issue that brings a lot of pain and also a lot of joy into our human experience. And so training, I think, goes a long way to helping us. And that begins with our parents. And if that doesn't happen, then somewhere down the line, we've got to pick up some training to manage our emotions. And I know that we're kind of differentiating between emotions and feelings. So when we grow up, when we become adults, we're supposed to manage our emotions and our feelings better than we were when we were children. So what happens? What is it that takes place between the time that we're children and we're adults? What is it that happens? What choices are we making? Some of that is because we've been exposed to some training. We've been exposed to some wisdom. We've been inspired. And so we take advantage of that. So feelings, emotions are useful, and so far as they are controlled and they are joyful and they serve others. And those can be done, that can be done through training and exposure to the right examples.
And controlled, but not suppressed.
Not suppressed.
There's a difference.
Right.
Totally agree. And I already know based on what was shared by Julia in terms of Gregory's consideration for someone, even if he may not be feeling a certain way, he sounds like he's gonna make sure that, hey, what are we really doing at this moment? Maybe I see something that gets us further down the road, so let's cool it off and Julia, go sit in the corner. So yeah, or go eat something. Get a Snickers bar because you're kind of upset and you're angry and you don't have a Snickers. Bob, coming to you. Do you consider others when your feelings take the lead?
I think the answer to that is yes, because what I have to do is hit kind of the pause button and go through the calculations and analysis and figuring it out why I'm responding this way, what's going on here, and all of that kind of stuff. So I tend to go inward and silent more than I do otherwise. And that said, Felton, as you well know, as well as anybody, sometimes that will involve me having conversations with a particularly trusted friend to just get stuff out of me and bounce it off of somebody I can trust who can help me, or who can add some perspective as I sort through, figure out whatever. That's not the person they're not the victim, if you will, of my frustration or of my emotion, but it's somebody that I'll take advantage of, if you will, because I can engage with them in a trusted way and bounce things and interact with things and have a constructive interaction that's very, very helpful to me. And, there are a couple of people on this planet that I have the pleasure and privilege and whatnot of having that kind of relationship with. And that's particularly helpful. But another thing I want to say is, every typology that's out there around personality, character, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, there's the primary personality, think of the Enneagram as an example. There's the primary, there's the principally presented persona. Then there's also the flip side of that. How do you respond in stress? And so whatever you find yourself being as one of those typologies, then you're going to have this other way that you respond in stress. And for me, it's what I've just described. It's my natural reaction is to go silent, go analytical, and think and figure it out and engage with people if I have the person that I can engage with as a sounding board. For some people that's therapy. For some people that's a close friend. For some people that's a spouse. Because it takes that comfort place, it takes that confidence, it takes that trust in order to do that.
Yeah, agreed with that also. There's a need to vent. I think that is that trash can that Vanessa was referencing, being taken out and put where it belongs, not spilling over, not smelling up the place. Sometimes you just got to vent. And sometimes it can be vent to yourself. Julia, sometimes it can be that journal that you love so much. It's just a way to get it out. It's just something to release, get that release valve. Okay, guys, we're running out of time, but I'm going to go around the space. I think this is a simple question, and it's been one that I said I would get back to, and I'm going to read Jay's comment because it goes right into the question. The honest answer is we never stop being children. We only learn to be adults. Each day, we are learning something new about the world and ourselves. I agree to an extent. And I'm interested in how you'll wrap this question in that. Give me the briefest answer you got, but understand that we'll revisit this conversation because I feel like Lisa should be here. So back to that children's part. Should we put a child's feelings first? Let that marinate just a second, but think about how I mean that. I do sincerely mean, based on everything we've discussed, should we put a child's feelings first? Go ahead, Jay. You got it.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we do need to put the child feeling first. The reason being is that we don't talk about the conditional programming that took place in our formative years. We call it parenting and rearing, but what we really did was teach that child how to deny their natural instinct and impulse. That's why we become adults questioning ourselves, because we never had time to develop how we truly feel and really explore that. I'm gonna leave it there because that's a whole lot to unpack there. But yes, I do think that we need to revisit a lot of our childlike experiences, most importantly, our emotions, to know why we respond the way we do in our latter years.
Appreciate you doing the thing I didn't ask, which was why not? I think everybody's here is going to understand the value of interacting with a child, which children generally are. They're the most honest people we know. Bob, quick answer, just should we put a child's feelings first?
Absolutely, and I think we do a terrible job of parenting by virtue of our not respecting children well enough. And to Jay Dwayne's point, we have to be there and help them work through and learn acknowledge, validate their experiences, help them figure out where to take those things in constructive ways. And I think that again is absolutely imperative, because otherwise they're still immature children when they become adults, and they still haven't been able to work out what they need to work out.
Indeed. I think Bob froze, but yeah, indeed. I think that's a good way of looking at it. You got an opportunity there. You got an opportunity to make a better you, possibly, if it's your child and they're responsive. Julie and Greg, putting the child first. Should we do it?
I think we should put the child first, and we're responsible for the child, and just using intelligence, and the child goes first. Children and small animals go first.
Look, for one, you're making me laugh because of small animal comment, but for two, Greg, you kind of already answered that when you brought it up in the context of taking advantage of that early time, the early years, the time you get to shape and mold. Vanessa, coming to you to take us out of here with this last comment. Did you want to say something, Greg, before we get out?
Oh, you are so sensitive. I am so impressed by you.
He's got feelings.
You got feelings. You got feelings, brother.
I got feelings.
What I was going to say was, in terms of children and the child experience, the children's experience, our lives as children, and something that we should encourage on into adulthood is imagination. It's a powerful thing, and that we're born with it, and then sometimes at some point we lose it. But gosh, if we can, that's a whole different conversation. But that idea of imagination and preserving it.
That's a good conversation and a good topic for another time, because I totally agree. You get older, your brain turns more to a rock than a sponge, and it gets a little tougher to enjoy certain little things. And I think that's where that imagination comes in. So I like that comment. And as far as kids go too, sometimes you got to let them fall so they can get back up. And that's a big part of understanding and learning and growing in a feeling way and emotional way. Vanessa, take us out of here with your last observations. Give me your answers to, should we put children first? I'm sure you're going to say yeah. And why?
No. Just kidding. No. I am one of those people. Unfortunately, I always had difficulty, but I was told that, how you can write a good paper is that you can argue both sides. But anyway, I'm not going to bore you with that. What I am going to say is that is true, certainly for most of us. And it certainly is true for me most of the time. But I keep hearkening back to something that Bob said in terms of, somewhere along the line, we got some training and some education. And I don't know that part comes through necessarily when a person's feelings are being affirmed all the time, because all the child understands at a certain age is that, hey, I got my way, not because it was right or wrong, but there are times when, a child's feelings perhaps, and I think all of us can make that determination for our own children in terms of their maturity level, what the situation is. But there are times that they will glean more and learn more as an experience when they are not, given that advantage, when they are not given their way, or that their feelings are not necessarily the premier thing in that equation. Because unfortunately, we live in a world where people don't always care about your feelings. And, we've all experienced bullies, whether they were in the second grade or in the workplace. And it's not necessarily the world we live in where that's always going to be the case. So at what point will we kind of decide to draw that line and I guess surrender, that premise of putting the child first in favor of a lesson that's going to be more valuable down the line. So I guess my answer would be yes and no, but thanks.
No, that's the letting them fall down. That's the taking the training wheels off. I definitely feel the same way about that, Vanessa. At some point, they got to kind of take the reins. But I think it's well worth centering their feelings along the way, especially to the point in time when you can see and recognize that they understand better how to self-analyze and navigate this crazy world. I want to thank you all for joining. This has been a great episode. We have to make sure we revisit this topic when Lisa is able to make it in here, because that was another person that spurred this to be in a discussion point this week. So thank you all for joining this evening. I would say stay warm, but it was hot today in February. You guys take care. Thanks, Junior Greg. Thanks, Vanessa. Thanks, Jay
Thanks,
Dwayne. Bob, appreciate
everybody.
you.